I am Marley Fenwick, a 31 years old woman. I'm a financial crime investigator in Los Angeles, and 3 months ago I was promoted to lead compliance analyst at my firm. That same week, my sister sent me a picture of an engagement ring that didn't just break my heart, it ruined everything I thought I knew about family. The last time I saw my sister before it all imploded, she was laughing through a mouthful of oat milk latte and telling me I needed to get out more. We were sitting on the patio of a trendy cafe in Culver City, sunlight glinting off her rose gold sunglasses, the scent of cinnamon and overpriced brunch floating through the air. She looked good. Too good. Designer tote on her arm, fresh highlights in her honey blonde waves, an effortless glow that didn't match her freelance income or her sporadic Instagram brand deals. I should have known something was off. But I didn't question it, I never did when it came to Tessa. That day, she leaned over and tugged playfully at my blazer sleeve. "You've got that tired corporate warrior look again. Seriously, Marley, when was the last time you had fun?" I remember smiling weakly. Define fun, because if it's spreadsheets and asset tracing, then yesterday. She rolled her eyes. "You're impossible." She said it like it was a joke, like I was the boring older sister and she was the light. And maybe I believed that even when I shouldn't have. 3 days later, my entire world cracked open. I was sitting at my desk on the 23rd floor of Camden Equity, surrounded by glass walls and the distant hum of printers and murmured meetings. The city buzzed below like a restless current. I was finishing a final risk report when my personal phone buzzed beside me. Fraud alert, $220,000 charge at Wolven & Co., Beverly Hills. At first I laughed or tried to. I clicked into the alert with idle curiosity, assuming it was a glitch. Wolven & Co. was a luxury jeweler, a place I'd only ever walked past on accident. But the transaction was real. Date that morning. Time 2:12 p.m. Card my personal Amex. Terminal type present at purchase. Authorization PIN verified. My heart started pounding. I yanked my purse onto my lap, dug frantically through it. My card was there, unmoved, untouched, still nestled between a CVS receipt and a half-used Metro card. This wasn't a stolen wallet. This was someone who knew my PIN, someone who had used it with purpose. I sat frozen in my chair, a fog flooding my head so fast I couldn't think clearly. Then my phone lit up again. A message from Tessa. "Look what Christian got me, ring ring ring." Attached was a photo. Her hand, freshly manicured, fingers delicately bent, flashing a diamond the size of a grape. Oval cut, platinum band, flanked with smaller diamonds in a halo setting so luminous it looked surreal, unreal, wrong. The message kept going. "Isn't it stunning? Totally shocked me," I cried. I stared at the image, unable to breathe. My thumb hovered over the screen. For one unbearable second, I convinced myself it was a coincidence. That maybe she used someone else's card, maybe Christian had. But I knew better. I typed, "Tessa, did you use my credit card?" The typing dots appeared. Then vanished. No reply. The rest of the day passed in a daze. I stared at compliance files while my brain lit up with spirals of panic. If the fraud department flagged the transaction for manual review and someone at the firm connected it to me, it could compromise every clearance I had. I could lose my clients, my promotion, my career. At 5:03 p.m. I called her. She didn't answer. At 5:05 I tried again. This time she picked up. "Hey," she sang, all innocence and sugar. "What's up?" "You used my card," I said, no preamble. "That was my card." She paused for half a beat. "What are you talking about?" "Wolven & Co. this morning, $220,000, my card." A beat of silence, then lightly, "Oh, that, Christian paid me back already, it's pending." "You didn't even ask me." "I thought it wouldn't be a big deal, we were in a rush, he wanted it to be perfect." I gripped the edge of my desk. "It is a big deal, it's fraud, Tessa." She scoffed, "Don't be dramatic, it's family, you know we've always covered for each other." My jaw clenched. That's not what covering means. But she was done explaining. "I'm your sister," she said. "You think I'd ever actually hurt you, just chill out." And she hung up. The silence that followed was deafening. I sat there in my empty office, fluorescent lights buzzing above me, the city bleeding orange and violet across the windows, and felt my entire body go cold. She didn't feel guilty, she felt entitled. And the worst part, she knew exactly what she was doing. That night, I filed a chargeback through the card company. It wouldn't be easy, not with physical verification and PIN use, but I sent every detail I had, the timestamps, the screenshot, the text. I flagged the purchase as unauthorized and submitted a written affidavit declaring no consent. I stayed up until 3 a.m. documenting everything, not just for the card company, for myself. I had a feeling this wasn't going to be the last time I'd need proof. What I didn't know then, couldn't have possibly predicted, was that this wasn't just about the ring. It was about everything that came after. Because 3 days later, during an onboarding meeting with a new corporate client, the senior partner shared a screen with a document titled Christian Vaughn Client Intake, Private Equity Portfolio Review. And beneath it, spouse-to-be Tessa Fenwick. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. Christian, the man who paid for that ring with my money, was now my client. And suddenly, this wasn't just personal. It was professional, dangerous, unforgivable. And I was standing on the edge of a storm I never saw coming. Christian Vaughn's name stared back at me like a bad omen. I didn't blink, couldn't. My screen froze on the client intake form while my mind tried to catch up with reality. Spouse-to-be Tessa Fenwick. I was suddenly aware of the soft hum of the conference room AC, the low static of someone's mic still live, the scratch of a pen 2 seats down. My pulse thundered in my ears. I shifted my hand slightly to scroll the shared screen down a few lines, hoping no one noticed the tremble in my wrist. Primary assets, private equity holdings, trust arrangements, pending spousal transfer agreements. Spousal. It wasn't just an engagement anymore. They were merging finances, tying documents and legal obligations together. I stared at the screen and thought, she used my card to buy a ring for a man I'm about to vet for fraud risk. And that man was smiling through the webcam window. Excited to work with your team, Christian said, his voice smooth like practice jazz. Tessa said I'd be in good hands, hope she's right. My chest tightened. He knew exactly who I was, and worse, he was playing it like a game. I forced a professional nod. We're looking forward to assisting. The rest of the call blurred. We discussed portfolio structures, document upload protocols, background checks, KYC compliance. I let the others talk. I scribbled notes. I answered 1 or 2 strategic questions, but internally I was collapsing. Christian never said anything overt, but his eyes stayed on me longer than they should. A twitch of amusement at the corners of his mouth, the smug lift of his brows when someone mentioned security thresholds. As if this wasn't a meeting, it was a message. By the time the call ended, I was soaked in sweat under my blouse. I closed my laptop slowly, my reflection catching in the black screen, pale, shell-shocked, burning. For 15 full minutes, I sat frozen in that empty conference room. My nails dug into the soft faux leather chair arms. My stomach churned with nausea and disbelief. I'd seen things like this happen to clients. To victims. Not to me. I wasn't supposed to be the one caught in a web. But now I was the spider, or maybe the fly, I couldn't tell which anymore. I needed advice. And there was only one person I trusted. Dana. I called her from the privacy of my car, parked in the far corner of the garage where no one could overhear. She picked up on the first ring. Marley. I didn't even say hello, it's him. There was a pause. Who? My sister's fiancé, the guy who bought the ring with my card, he's one of our clients, Christian Vaughn. She exhaled slowly. Jesus. I'm on the review team. I have access to his files. If I recuse myself, it'll raise flags. If I stay silent, I'm complicit. Dana was quiet for a moment. Then, you need to protect yourself, carefully. Start documenting every single interaction, every call, every message. Don't say anything directly yet. Watch him. Because if he knows who you are and he's in your system, he's testing you. I swallowed hard. He's already winning. No, she said firmly, not yet. That night I barely slept. I opened a new notebook, labeled it Plan B, and began to log everything. Meeting notes from the client onboarding. Screen recordings where allowed. Timestamps of Christian's phrasing, his tone, his body language. A copy of the email Tessa sent with the ring photo. The text thread, her evasiveness, her silence. My fraud report from the credit card company. I needed a trail, one that no one could twist. The next morning, I walked into the office like I hadn't just discovered my sister's fiancé was the most dangerous client on our roster. I smiled at coworkers. I complimented the new receptionist earrings. I filed 3 reports. I scheduled a one-on-one with my supervisor and asked, casually, if we could reevaluate our department's internal recusal protocols, hypothetically, of course. But I didn't tell them the truth. Not yet. Then came the moment I was dreading. An internal Slack message from our analyst channel. Paperclip at M. Fenwick, Christian Vaughn's doc package just landed in your review folder. Let us know if you need a second set of eyes. I stared at it for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed. Received, will begin review AOD. And just like that, I was inside his vault. I opened the document suite with shaking hands. The man had layers. Accounts tied to shell LLCs, trust funds registered to unlisted beneficiaries, transfers that danced just beneath the radar of threshold flags. On paper, it was legal, just barely. But to the trained eye, it was filled with red flags disguised as elegant tax strategy. He wasn't just smart. He was seasoned. He'd been doing this long before Tessa. That night, I texted her again. Call me, please, this is serious. No reply. At 11:07 p.m., I sent one more message. Tessa, I think you're in real danger. The message stayed unread. The next morning, I got an envelope. No return address. Just my name, Marley, typed in neat caps. Inside, 3 glossy surveillance photos. Me at the coffee shop with Tessa, at a gas station, in my office parking lot. No note. No explanation. Just presence. Proof. And a message, even if it wasn't written. I see you, I can reach you, I am watching. My hands shook so violently I dropped my keys. That was the moment I stopped playing nice. Because if Christian wanted a war, he'd just chosen the wrong woman. I didn't scream when I saw the envelope, I didn't even flinch. Instead, I walked back into my apartment like nothing had happened, set the glossy photos down on the kitchen counter, and stared at them while the kettle whistled behind me. I stood there, motionless, as steam rose and blurred the edge of Christian's smirk captured in the reflection of the parking garage window. I knew it was him. He didn't need to sign it. This was his move, psychological warfare in a velvet glove. I poured myself a mug of tea I didn't want, hands still trembling, and dropped into the corner of my couch. I stared at the photos again. They weren't threatening, not explicitly, but they weren't nothing either. They were a message, not just I see you. But you're not as safe as you think. I took photos of the envelope and the contents with my work phone, uploaded them into a secure drive, and logged the incident in my growing document, the one I'd started calling the fire file. Every little piece mattered now. And then I did something reckless. I called Tessa. Not a text, not an email, an actual call at midnight, fully knowing she wouldn't answer. I didn't care. She picked up on the second ring. Her voice was tired, fragile. Marley. I just got an envelope, I said, skipping pleasantries. Photos of me, someone following me, Tessa, and I don't need a signed confession to know who sent them. There was silence on the other end. I need you to tell me what you know, I pressed. I need you to be honest. Is he watching me? Has he said anything, Tessa, please? Christian does, she hesitated. He wouldn't do that, not like that. My throat tightened. He would, he has. More silence. Then she whispered, he said you were unstable, that you were digging because you were jealous, that you were lonely. I let the words hit me like cold water. So you believed him? I didn't want to, she said, and her voice cracked. I closed my eyes. The worst part wasn't the envelope. It wasn't even that Christian was stalking me through my own shadow. It was that he had her convinced I was the villain. Listen to me, I said carefully. He's laundering money through accounts with your name on them. I've seen it, Tessa. You're not his fiancé, you're his asset. I don't know, she stammered. He says you hate me, that you've always hated me. I've protected you since we were kids, I snapped. Since Mom was pulling double shifts and I was packing your lunch every day, does that sound like hate to you? I don't know what to believe anymore, she whispered, and then she hung up. The dial tone was the coldest sound I'd ever heard. I went to work the next morning feeling hollowed out. I didn't bother with makeup. I pulled my hair into a rough ponytail, wore the same navy blazer from 2 days ago, and walked into my office like I didn't feel a storm building under my skin. Because that's what women like me are taught to do, perform composure, even when we're unraveling inside. I had barely set my bag down when I got the email. Subject: compliance concern urgent. Marley, an anonymous concern was submitted this morning regarding your role in the Christian Vaughn file. Given your personal connection to the client's fiancé, we need to meet today to discuss the conflict of interest allegations. Please report to HR by 10:00 a.m. Diane. I stared at the screen. My heart didn't race, my stomach didn't drop, I just froze. He filed a complaint. Or he got someone else too. And now he was weaponizing my own professionalism against me. I walked to HR on autopilot. Diane was waiting, composed, clipboard in hand, sitting across from a legal rep and one of the firm's internal ethics officers. Marley, she said gently, thanks for coming, we just need to ask a few questions. I nodded, sat down, crossed my ankles like I was back in prep school. They started with the basics. How long had I known the client? Did I know of any shared assets? Had I disclosed any conflict? I answered everything calmly, truthfully, no spin. Then Diane looked up and asked, did you at any point interact with the client's fiancé during the course of onboarding? I didn't know she was his fiancé until after the file landed in my review, I replied. Once I realized the conflict, I began documenting everything. I intended to submit a formal recusal this week. Why didn't you recuse immediately? Because I was also the victim of a financial breach involving both parties, I said. And I was advised by legal counsel to document carefully before making a move. They exchanged glances. I slid the folder across the table. My sister used my credit card to purchase the ring. I have the transaction reports, the text messages, and my fraud affidavit. I also have screenshots of trust account transactions that tie Christian Vaughn's assets to falsified authorizations using my sister's identity. There are multiple red flags across several of his investment accounts. They didn't touch the folder. The ethics officer leaned back slowly. Why didn't you report him sooner? Because Christian Vaughn is not just dangerous, he's careful, I said. And if I'd made a move too early, he would have buried the evidence and turned this into a family squabble instead of the financial crime it is. Diane glanced at the legal rep, who finally nodded. You'll be placed on temporary review, she said. Not as a punishment, but to protect you while we investigate the client's activities. I nodded, understood. When I walked out of that room, I didn't feel defeated. I felt ready. Because now he'd crossed the line. This wasn't a private war anymore. This was public. I went home and reopened my fire file. I added the HR transcript, the envelope photos, the voicemail from Tessa that night she'd left one after hanging up, sobbing, saying, I didn't know he was this cruel. I began compiling the packet for FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. Dana helped me quietly through back channels. And then I got a call from an unfamiliar number. Marley Fenwick, the voice asked. Yes. This is Jody Rehan. I used to work as a junior paralegal on Christian Vaughn's legal team. I saw your name in a ledger search and I think I have something you need to see. My pulse quickened. I'm listening. There are emails, she whispered, internal ones from Christian about your sister, about you. I gripped the edge of the counter. I want to help you, she said. I've watched him do this to 3 other women. I closed my eyes. This was it. The crack in the glass. The voice I needed to make the whole damn system start paying attention. Jody Rehan didn't sound like someone seeking revenge. She sounded like someone who had spent years holding her breath. "I'm not doing this for attention," she said, her voice low, deliberate. "But I couldn't stay quiet after what he did to you. I knew your name. You were listed in the Vaughn internal reports as a potential conflict risk." My blood ran cold, internal reports like a dossier. "Essentially," she confirmed. "When Christian started getting serious with your sister, he opened a profile on you. Background, salary, position, vulnerabilities, public social history, even a scan of your old LinkedIn from 2016. I sat down slowly. "You're telling me he planned this?" "He knew Tessa had a sister in financial compliance. He said it made her a valuable onboarding vehicle." Those were his words. I closed my eyes. I felt nausea roll through me like a tide. This wasn't just manipulation, it was premeditated extraction. "Do you have proof?" "I do," she replied. "I saved every email. I was scared. I didn't know if I'd ever need them, but something about how he spoke about women made me sick. He called them soft pivots, people you use to redirect attention." My hands were shaking. She sent me a secured Dropbox link within minutes. I clicked it open while she stayed on the line. It was all there. An email from Christian to his business partner titled Marley Risk, with a bullet list of everything he knew about me, including my clearance level at Camden, my apartment address, and the type of car I drove. A breakdown of my credit limits. Even speculation on emotional weak spots, including the loss of our mom 5 years ago. "This isn't surveillance," I whispered. "This is a target profile." "He used similar tactics on 2 other women I know of," Jody said. "But they didn't have your credentials, they didn't have your fight." For a moment I couldn't breathe. Not because I was afraid, but because I realized I had everything I needed to burn him down. When I hung up, I immediately sent the full document set to Dana. Within hours, we had 3 new legal pathways opened: coordinated submission to FinCEN, SEC compliance irregularity review, and the preliminary support of a DOJ field officer familiar with Christian's previous clients. This wasn't just a fraud case anymore. It was a pattern, a career of deceit threaded through weddings, trusts, and false love stories. In Tessa. She had no idea. I called her. This time she answered on the first ring. "Tessa," I said, "I need to show you something in person." She hesitated. "Is it about Christian?" "It's about you and me, and how he's been using both of us since the day he met you." We met at Griffith Park the next morning. It was early, before the weekend rush, the runners, the tourists. The air was cool, soft with dew, the kind of California morning that fools you into thinking the day might be kind. She wore a beige hoodie and oversized sunglasses, arms wrapped around herself like armor. I brought a printed folder and sat beside her on a bench beneath an oak tree. "This," I said gently, "is your fiancé's real engagement." She frowned, flipping the folder open. I watched her face as she scanned the emails, the profile breakdowns, the asset manipulation maps. Her lip trembled. Her hands began to shake. "No," she murmured, "no, this ca." "Tess," I said softly, "he never planned a life with you, he planned a strategy around you." Her eyes met mine. Tears welled. "He used you to access me, didn't he?" I nodded. She looked away, shoulders stiffening. All this time I thought maybe I was the problem, maybe I asked for too much, maybe I pushed him. "No," I said sharply, "you didn't deserve this, none of this is your fault." She didn't speak for a long time. Then in a whisper, "What do we do now?" I took a breath. "We go to FinCEN, we submit this together. As co-victims, you sign the affidavit, you give your statement, and we make sure he never gets near another trust, another card, another woman like us ever again." Her hands trembled in her lap. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I'll do it, but not just for me, for Mom." I felt my throat close. She opened her wallet and pulled out a tiny laminated photo, Mom in her nurse's scrubs, arms around both of us on the front porch. We couldn't have been older than 10 and 12. "She told me once," Tessa whispered, "that if I ever felt like I wasn't enough, to look at you and remember who raised us." I reached for her hand. And for the first time in years, she didn't pull away. We submitted the packet together that night. Signed, sealed, sent. The DOJ investigator called us the next morning. "We've been watching Vaughn for months," she said. "Your documentation just cracked the case open." And just like that, the tides turned. Christian's accounts were frozen within 48 hours. His firm went into PR lockdown. A federal investigation was announced, not publicly, not yet, but internally. The agencies knew now. They were watching. Tessa stayed with me for a week. She cried, slept too much, ate almost nothing. But each morning she got up. Each night she stayed up with me going through documents. She was becoming someone else, someone stronger. One night, while we were reorganizing the files, she looked at me and said, "I think I'm starting to remember who I was before he found me." I didn't say anything. I just reached out and held her hand. Because the real victory wasn't the indictment. It was this. Two sisters finding each other again in the wreckage. Rebuilding trust in the middle of a battlefield. And realizing that sometimes, healing doesn't come from punishment. It comes from standing beside the person you once thought you'd lost. The week Tessa moved into my apartment was one of quiet rearrangements. Her suitcase sat half open at the foot of my guest bed, spilling hoodies and half-used makeup bags. She never asked where anything belonged, she just made space. Her toothbrush next to mine, her coffee mug resting in the sink, her phone charger wrapped around the lamp I kept on my nightstand. And slowly, without either of us saying it out loud, she started shedding Christian from her life, one small object at a time. The framed engagement photo she once had as her wallpaper, deleted. The ring locked in a drawer. The passwords to the joint bank account changed. The Instagram captions that once said "forever" archived. But grief is strange. Some nights she still sat on the couch with her knees pulled to her chest, staring blankly at the TV, like her whole body had been unplugged. "I don't know who I was with him," she whispered once as a baking show flickered in front of us. "I thought I was in love, but now I think I was just afraid to be invisible again." That sentence shattered something in me. Because I knew what she meant. We both came from a house where silence was a second parent, where mom's shifts kept her exhausted and dad's absence left more than just a dent in our photo albums. Tessa had spent her whole life trying to be seen, and Christian, with his tailored suits and charming smirks, had made her feel like a spotlight. Until he didn't. And now we were here. Two women trying to remember how to exist without guilt or performance. But Christian wasn't done with us. Not even close. The letter arrived 3 days later. Delivered by courier, hand-signed, thick paper folded like a weapon. It was a civil countersuit notice. Filed against Tessa. Alleging misappropriation of funds, breach of fiduciary duty, and slander with intent to defame. The claim that she had created the FENVA trust without his knowledge, used my card intentionally, and then conspired with me to stage a coordinated financial smear campaign for personal revenge and media leverage. I read the document 3 times. Then I turned to Tessa, who stood frozen in the kitchen holding the opened envelope. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. "Marley," she whispered, "he's going to make this look like I used you." I took the letter from her trembling hands. "He's trying to flip the narrative. If he wins." "He won't." But I wasn't as sure as I sounded. Christian wasn't just cruel, he was strategic. With this countersuit, he'd done what predators always do when they lose control. He made his victims look like aggressors. Tessa collapsed onto the couch, her face pale. "He's going to make everyone believe I planned this, that I dragged you into it, that I—" "You didn't," I said, kneeling in front of her. "We're going to prove it together." "But what if they believe him?" I looked her in the eyes. "Then we give them the truth, every ugly, complicated, painful inch of it, and we let that speak louder than his lies." That night I called Dana. She answered on the first ring. "How bad?" "Bad," I said. "He countersued civil against Tessa." "Expected," she replied calmly. "It's a tactic, but we'll beat it." I exhaled. "I want to go public." Silence on the line. "You're sure?" "Yes," I said. "He's controlling the story. We've been reacting to him from day one. I want to take the microphone back." "Okay," Dana said. "Then I have someone you should meet." 2 days later, I sat across from Priya Shore. Investigative journalist, calm, razor-sharp, and already sipping her second iced espresso when I arrived. We met at a small cafe on Fairfax back booth corner table. She came prepared, notepad, recorder, NDA for both me and Tessa. "Why now?" she asked, flipping open the pad. "Why speak up?" "Because Christian Vaughn is going to bury my sister in the court of public opinion," I said. "And if we stay silent, he'll win without ever needing a verdict." Priya nodded. "You have evidence." "More than enough." I handed her a drive. Emails, bank trails, screenshots, video of Christian calling Tessa his financial buffer, the envelope photos, the surveillance. She listened to our story in complete silence. And when we were done, she said, "This isn't just fraud, this is coercive architecture." I blinked. "What?" "He builds women like structures, one foundation at a time. Identity, trust, financial interdependence. And then he walks away while they burn down around him." The phrase hit me in the chest. I reached for Tessa's hand beneath the table. We both nodded. "Write it," I told Priya, "all of it." The article dropped the next week. Front page of the finance section, viral within hours. "Behind the Ring: How Two Sisters Exposed a Billionaire Romance Scam." It wasn't tabloid. It was truth, surgical and unflinching. Tessa's voice was there, raw and human, so was mine. Jodi Rehan gave a statement. Dana offered expert analysis. It outlined Christian's pattern, his manipulation, his control, and how we, two women considered disposable in his scheme, brought him down anyway. The reaction? Split. Some hailed us as heroes. Others called it a smear campaign. But the tide had turned. Because now he was on the defense. And we were the ones holding the light. That same night, the countersuit was dropped. No explanation, no follow-up. Just gone. Poof. A lawyer's silent acknowledgement that fighting us in public was a losing game. Tessa sat on my floor, phone in her lap, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He gave up," she whispered. "No," I said softly, "we didn't." And that was the real victory. Not that Christian backed down, but that we didn't disappear. We didn't collapse under the weight of shame and silence. We stood up side by side and said, "We're still here." In that was everything. After the article, the world felt louder. Not chaotic, just amplified. Every sound had weight. Every breath, every glance, every word felt like it echoed. Like the walls were paying attention now, like the truth had teeth. For a few days, Tessa and I lived inside the storm's eye, strangely calm at the center of something that had once felt untouchable. But the rest of the world, it had questions. Headlines spun, comments poured in. Some called us brave, some called us liars. Some demanded to know how a woman like me, sharp, credentialed, composed, could possibly let her sister get away with fraud. Those stung the most. Because they didn't know what it's like to watch someone you love get used like a pawn. To see them fall apart from the inside out and still believe, stubbornly, stupidly, that you could save them. And truthfully, I did let her get away with anything. I stood between her and the fire. There's a difference. The following Monday, Camden Equity reinstated me. It wasn't dramatic. A quiet email. Subject line: clearance restored. Diane met me at my office with a soft smile and a white folder. "Welcome back," she said. "We owe you an apology. You acted with integrity. We see that now." I took the folder with a nod. I didn't need flowers or speeches. I just needed my desk, my work, my silence. I sat at my familiar corner spot, overlooking downtown LA, and for the first time in weeks, opened a file that didn't have Christian Vaughn's name on it. But even as I typed, my hands trembled. Because peace after that kind of war feels suspicious. Like it might vanish if you breathe too hard. That afternoon, Tessa texted me. "Can I come by after work? I found something." I replied, "Always." She arrived just before sunset, her hair in a bun, a manila envelope clutched in her hand. No makeup, no performance, just Tessa stripped down and real. We sat at the kitchen table. She slid the envelope toward me. This was in a box of Christian's old stuff. I'd taken it with me when I moved out, didn't realize what was inside. I opened it. Inside were 3 documents. A preliminary marriage license application unsigned but filled out. Under prenup clause, Christian had written, assets to remain separate, engagement ring considered business expense. A spreadsheet titled Projected Net Gains from Merger, Fenwick Vaughn Holdings. It wasn't just about investments. It included life insurance policies, staged real estate purchases, and the proposed timing of a high-profile wedding meant to coincide with a trust transfer. A printout of an email to a name I didn't recognize, subject line, Marley's timeline. In it, he outlined the need to keep me undermined professionally to minimize risk to Tessa's accounts. I felt physically ill. You were a file to him, she whispered. We both were. I nodded, my jaw tight. This changes everything. No, she said, it confirms everything. She looked up at me, eyes steady. Let's take him down for real. We handed the new evidence to Priya. She wrote a follow-up piece. This time, the title wasn't about a ring. It was about power. Blueprint for Betrayal, how Christian Vaughn engineered financial relationships as strategic takeovers. The article didn't just go viral. It lit up financial watchdog forums, spurred Twitter threads with screenshots, and triggered renewed interest from 3 former Vaughn clients who had previously signed NDAs. Now they were speaking out. Because we had spoken first. And with that momentum, the DOJ fast-tracked the investigation. Within weeks, Christian's offshore accounts were flagged for irregularities. His assets were frozen. He was ordered to appear for questioning with threat of indictment. His firm, once the gold standard of private equity legal work, distanced themselves with a single devastating press release. We do not condone the behavior of Mr. Vaughn, and we fully support the investigation into his independent financial activities. It was over. At least for him. But for us, it was only just beginning. Tessa started therapy again, real therapy this time. She began a support group for women who had survived financial coercion and identity entanglement. She called it the Ledger Circle. She spoke publicly. She wasn't polished, she wasn't perfect. But she was honest. She told the story of a woman who once thought being chosen was the same as being loved, and how she learned that sometimes the real love is what shows up when the money's gone and the spotlight fades. I stood in the back at her first talk, holding my breath. She didn't see me at first. But halfway through her story, she looked up and smiled. And for the first time since the photo of that diamond ring hit my phone, I felt something crack open in my chest. Not pain. Not panic. Pride. She was standing. And I was standing too. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail, not legal this time, not formal. It was handwritten, crisp white paper. From Christian. I almost didn't open it. But I did. Marley, you're smarter than I gave you credit for. You played this well. I underestimated the bond between sisters. You could have ruined me quietly, but you made it public. I hope you enjoy the legacy you've built. See, no apology. No acknowledgement of guilt. Just that eerie, chilling calm he always used when cornered. I lit the letter on fire over my kitchen sink and watched it curl into ash. Then I closed the window, poured myself a glass of wine, and turned on the TV. I wasn't thinking about him anymore. I was thinking about me. And what came next? It's strange how quickly silence becomes routine. In the weeks after the fire letter, life returned to a version of normal. Not the normal I knew before Christian, that version of reality was long gone, but something quieter. Safer. A normal where I woke up without scanning the street for black SUVs, where Tessa made coffee while humming badly to Adele, and where I actually slept through the night. But silence, I've learned, is never still. It gathers. It waits. And just as you start to trust it, it delivers something new. It started with a call from Priya. I've got something you should see, she said. It's not public yet. She sent me a file, no subject, just a secure link. I clicked it in the middle of my workday, heart already racing from the tone in her voice. It was a subpoena draft. Not for Christian. For me. Issued by Christian's defense team. They were building a counterargument, not another civil countersuit, not a media smear, but a pretrial attack. They were trying to paint my whistleblower status as biased. They claimed I had a personal vendetta, that my relationship with my sister clouded my professional judgment, and that I had inappropriately accessed privileged internal data. Even though I had followed protocol, even though my actions had been approved post-review, even though my file was airtight, he was still trying to make it my fault. I stood from my desk, walked calmly to the stairwell, and sank to the cold concrete, letting the silence wash over me like a tide of static. He wasn't just defending himself. He was trying to erase the one thing I had left, my credibility. And for a woman in compliance, that's the same as a death sentence. I called Dana that night. We met in person, my request, at her house. Her dogs barked behind the door until she let me in. Her living room smelled like cinnamon and lavender, safe and grounding. She poured wine, handed me a blanket, and didn't say a word until I did. "They're coming for me," I whispered. "He's going to try to get me disqualified as a witness." "He's bluffing," she said. "He knows you're clean, he's trying to spook you." "Well, it's working," I snapped, and then immediately softened. "Sorry, I feel like I'm losing again, like no matter how much truth I carry, he finds a way to make me doubt it." Dana leaned back, watching me. "Do you know why most people lose these battles?" "Because they give up." "No," she said, "because they keep trying to prove they're the victim instead of standing firm in the fact that they're the witness." I blinked. She leaned forward. "You're not here to be pitied, Marley. You're here to testify, to expose, to outlast. Stop thinking like a woman defending her name. Start thinking like a woman protecting the next one." I stared at her, throat burning. "I'm tired," I whispered. "I know," she said gently, "but you're not done yet." That week, I met with the DOJ legal team again, this time with a new folder, one I called Countermeasures. Inside it, a timeline of all internal communications I had with my firm regarding the Christian file. Documentation of when I discovered the conflict. Legal advisories from Dana's firm backing my ethical decisions. A letter of support from Diane, the HR director, validating my integrity. I even included internal Slack messages, my original fraud report, and surveillance timestamps from the day I received the envelope. I wasn't just going to show up to court prepared. I was going to show up impenetrable. Tessa came with me the day I delivered the file. She sat quietly in the lobby as I walked down the long corridor into the legal chambers, her fingers twisting around the strap of her bag. When I came back out, her eyes scanned mine like she needed proof I hadn't been broken. I smiled faintly. She exhaled. "We're really doing this," she said. "We already did." That night, she curled up on the couch with a journal in her lap and a pen in her hand. She'd been writing a lot lately, not for anyone else, just for her. "Do you ever feel like you're still waiting for the sky to fall?" she asked softly, eyes never leaving the page. "All the time." She looked up. "What do you do about it?" "I build a shelter," I said, "and I stay standing anyway." She smiled a little. "That sounds like you." The subpoena did come. Just like Priya said. But it didn't land the way Christian wanted. Because by the time it arrived, the DOJ had already declared me a key witness. They released a protective order barring any private action intended to intimidate or disqualify me. They saw through the bluff. His team tried to spin it. The media didn't bite. Too much damage had already been done. His reputation wasn't just tarnished, it was unraveling. Former clients were pulling out. Investors demanded transparency. And one of his offshore accounts was formally flagged for international laundering scrutiny. Tessa and I watched it unfold like spectators at a show. We'd already written the ending too. Only now we weren't just watching. We were headlining. One evening, as spring cracked open into early summer, we sat on the balcony in quiet reflection. "I started to miss him this morning," Tessa said suddenly. I turned to her. I didn't miss who he was, I missed who I thought he was. I missed the version of myself I felt when he looked at me like I mattered. I nodded slowly. "And I realized that version of me still exists," she said. "She's just not dependent on anyone's eyes anymore." That was healing. Not some grand epiphany, not a revenge arc, Just that, a woman remembering her worth outside of someone else's validation. A few days later, we were both called for a final round of pretrial testimony prep. I wore my navy blazer. Tessa wore a clean white blouse, the same one she wore in the engagement photo, except this time the ring was gone. She stood in front of the legal team and read her opening statement like it was a vow. There were tears in her voice but steel in her spine. I once thought love was about who chose me, she said, but I learned it's about who respects me, and sometimes that means choosing yourself even when it breaks your heart. The room went still. When she finished, they clapped. Quiet, respectful. And when she sat down beside me, I reached for her hand. We were ready. Ready for court. Ready for truth. Ready for the final storm. But for the first time, we weren't scared of it. Because we had already survived the worst part. Believing it was our fault. And now we were done being quiet. Courtrooms aren't like the movies. There's no thunderclap when you walk in, no dramatic music, no one gasps or whispers when you sit down. It's all routine, sterile wood, uncomfortable chairs, the echo of shoes against tile, and the stale scent of paper and polished fear. But for me and Tessa, it felt like a reckoning. Christian Vaughn sat at the defendant's table, flanked by a legal team so expensive you could hear the retainer fee in their tailored silence. He wore a charcoal suit, no tie, crisp white collar. He didn't look at us. Good. Because if he had, I might have done something reckless. The judge was brisk, a woman in her 50s with silver hair coiled into a bun so tight it looked like a weapon. We are here today for formal testimony proceedings in the matter of Vaughn versus the United States. Charges under financial fraud, misrepresentation, identity theft, and trust manipulation will be reviewed in witness statements before proceeding to full trial. My name was called first. I stood, my heels clicked across the tile. My blazer suddenly felt too tight. I took the stand, swore the oath, sat down, and for the first 5 seconds I just stared at my hands. Then I raised my eyes to the room and began. My name is Marley Fenwick. I am a financial crime investigator for Camden Equity. On February 3rd of this year, I received a fraud alert on my personal credit card for $220,000. I assumed it was an error. It was not. From there, I told them everything. Not just facts, but the story. I painted it, every inch of it, with the precision of someone who had lived it twice, once in real time and again in paperwork. I walked them through the ring. The pin, the text from Tessa, the silence, the onboarding meeting where Christian's name popped up on my screen like a ghost. I held nothing back. I showed them the folder, the emails, the surveillance, the silent envelope. And when asked, why didn't you report the conflict of interest immediately, I looked the defense attorney dead in the eyes and said, because Christian Vaughn is not just a man with money, he's a man with power. And the second I made noise, I knew he'd try to weaponize every piece of my life to discredit me, and he did. He flinched just a little. The prosecutor asked how I knew Tessa hadn't been complicit at first. And I said because I watched her believe he loved her, and women don't fabricate betrayal that vivid, they survive it. When I stepped down, the room was silent. And for the first time in months, I felt like my voice had stuck to something. Tessa testified the next day. Her hair was down, soft, unguarded. She looked straight ahead, not once glancing at Christian. My name is Tessa Fenwick, she said, and I was engaged to a man who taught me that love can be currency, that identity can be investment, that trust can be a liability. Her voice didn't tremble. She told the court about the proposal, about the ring, about how Christian had offered to take care of everything, how he handled the accounts, the trusts, the LLC, how he told her it was normal to backdate filings, just a formality, he'd said. Then she told them about the day she realized it wasn't love, it was leverage. She showed them the spreadsheet, the email, the prenup with the phrase, ring considered business expense. And then she said, I thought I was going to marry him, I thought he saw me, but he didn't. He saw my last name, my sister's title, my vulnerability. She paused, then looked up straight at the judge. But I see him now. That landed like a thunderclap. Christian never took the stand. His lawyers knew better. He watched us both impassively, as if we were characters in a script he once controlled. But his silence spoke volumes. And when closing remarks began, his team didn't argue innocence. They argued ambiguity. Who can say where consent begins and ends in intimate relationships? Was the card really stolen or misunderstood? Were the trust funds misused or simply poorly structured? I almost laughed. Because this is what predators do when cornered. They don't deny. They blur. They confuse. But we had facts. And now we had momentum. The judge called a recess before ruling. Tessa and I sat in the hallway, just two women on a wooden bench, knees nearly touching, hearts in our throats. She reached into her bag and pulled out something small. It was a necklace. Gold chain, simple pendant. Our mothers. She gave this to me the day I graduated college, Tessa said quietly, told me to wear it when I felt like I'd lost my voice. She slipped it over my neck. And for the first time, I didn't tell her I didn't need it. Because I did. The ruling came in the next morning. No full verdict yet, that would come later, but a decisive motion from the bench. The judge accepted both our testimonies as truthful and critical to the fraud narrative. She approved the DOJ's motion to proceed with a full criminal trial and formally protected our whistleblower status from further legal attack. Christian's defense team didn't blink. But I saw the flicker in Christian's jaw. He lost the narrative. And when you lose the story, you lose the outcome. We walked out of the courthouse into warm California sunlight. Tessa blinked up at the sky like she wasn't used to it anymore. You think this is the part where we celebrate? She asked. I shook my head. No, this is the part where we breathe. We got in my car, we drove for hours, no destination, just music, wind, freedom. We ended up in Santa Barbara. Sat on the beach barefoot. We didn't talk about court. We didn't talk about Christian. We talked about our mom, about the first time Tessa rode a bike, about how she used to draw fake concert tickets on index cards and sell them to me for pretend shows in the backyard. We laughed so hard we cried. Because sometimes healing doesn't sound like victory. It sounds like childhood. It sounds like coming home. That night, I opened my laptop and began to write a letter I never planned to send. Not to Christian. To myself. The version of me who thought protecting Tessa meant staying quiet. Who thought silence was strength. I told her what I wish I'd known from the start. That survival isn't just about what you escape. It's about what you choose to become. And I was done surviving. I was ready to live. I thought the trial was the last battle. But some wars don't end in courtrooms. They end in boardrooms, in group chats, in quiet conversations that happen off the record and still change everything. Christian didn't go quietly. He couldn't. Because Christian Vaughn wasn't just a man, he was a brand. He was the rainmaker in financial law circles. The man with the silver tongue and the platinum Rolodex. His name was etched into conference panels, alumni walls, and startup accelerator boards. And now his name was a liability. But instead of retreating, he went on a redemption tour. First, a podcast, some niche show run by a former finance bro turned healing guide. Christian spun a yarn about family betrayal, cancel culture, and the risk of trusting too much. Then a Medium article titled, When Love Becomes Leverage, How My Engagement Cost Me My Reputation. He never used our names. But the story was unmistakably ours. He painted me as a jealous older sister, painted Tessa as vulnerable but impressionable, claimed I had used my professional status to destroy what he built, claimed he had only ever wanted to love a woman who came with complicated attachments. Attachments. That's what we were to him. Like wires, like bombs. Tessa saw it first. She sent me the link in the middle of the night with no message, just a broken heart emoji. I read every word. Every single manipulative, polished, self-pitying word. And then I sat up in bed, turned on the light, and opened a blank document. Because if Christian wanted to build a legacy out of ashes, I was going to make sure they weren't ours. I met with Priya again that week. We sat in her office this time, a small converted garage-turned-home studio with whiteboards full of arrows and timelines. She poured me tea in a chipped mug that said muckrakers get *tea done. He's trying to play the long game, she said. Stall the trial, reshape the narrative, and rebuild his consulting empire before the dust settles. How do we stop him? We don't, she said, sipping her tea. We outshine him. I blinked. What? You and Tessa, the truth is what people believe, it's what they remember, and you need to make your story unforgettable. She handed me a file. Inside were outlines. A book proposal. Not a revenge memoir. A resource. For women who have been targeted, manipulated, financially coerced in the shadows of romance, family, or trust. The title at the top read, Consent by Design, What They Don't Teach You About Financial Abuse. I felt my throat close. Will anyone want to hear it? I asked. They already are, Priya said. You just need to give them permission to believe it. Tessa took some convincing. I don't want to be defined by him, she said, not forever. You won't be, I promised, but you were part of it, and someone out there is where you were right now, scared, alone, about to say yes to a ring she doesn't understand. That's what did it. She said yes. And just like that, the book began. We worked on it every weekend. Sat on my balcony with coffee and noise-canceling headphones, unraveling everything we'd lived through. Each chapter peeled back a layer. What it feels like when someone uses your signature as a strategy. The early warning signs we ignored. The difference between secrecy and privacy. What forgiveness really looks like, not for them, but for yourself. We didn't sugarcoat anything. We told the truth. Not polished, not pitied, just real. And the more we wrote, the more Christian's silence grew deafening. His legal team tried once more to delay trial, citing media interference and reputational harm. The judge denied it, and then issued a gag order. Christian Vaughn couldn't speak to press, publish articles, or give interviews until the trial concluded. His platform disappeared overnight. It was poetic almost. Because silence was never his weapon. It was ours. On the morning we submitted the manuscript, Tessa and I got up early, walked to the pier, and stood barefoot in the sand as the sun rose over the water. She pulled out her phone and snapped a photo. 2 shadows in golden light. Caption: Not victims, not villains, just 2 women who survived the same storm. That post went viral in an hour. 20,000 shares. Messages poured in. Women, men, non-binary survivors, all telling us their own versions of being gaslit, stolen from, reshaped by someone who claimed to love them. We weren't alone. We never had been. And now neither were they. That night Tessa made us dinner. Burnt lasagna, too much garlic. We laughed until we cried. Then between bites she said something that stuck with me. You know what the worst part was? What? I didn't lose myself when I gave him everything. I lost myself when I stopped believing I deserved to get any of it back. I stared at her speechless. Because that was the truth at the center of everything. The money wasn't the wound. The betrayal wasn't the wound. The real wound was the erasure. And reclaiming your story, your space, your name was the healing. The DOJ sent a formal notice the following week. Trial date set October 12th. Christian Vaughn would be tried under 6 counts of fraud, 3 counts of coercive financial control, and 1 count of conspiracy to falsify federal documents. His bail was revoked due to evidence tampering. He was arrested. Again. No suits this time. No silver tie. Just a man who had used women like chess pieces, now checkmated by the very pawns he thought couldn't move. I stood in my office that evening, looking out at the city lights. Downtown LA stretched out like circuitry, glowing, pulsing, endless. Diane knocked gently on my door. You've got a package, she said. I turned. It was from our publisher. Inside, 2 advanced copies of the book. Glossy cover, our names in gold foil. Tessa Fenwick and Marley Fenwick. Consent by Design. I ran my fingers over the letters. Felt every ounce of the journey it took to put them there. Then I picked up my phone and called Tessa. "I'm ready," I said. "For what?" "To testify again, to finish this." She didn't hesitate. "Me too." October 12th arrived with gray skies. Not stormy, just solemn. I woke early, long before my alarm. I watched the light shift across the ceiling, pale and quiet, like the world knew what was coming. This wasn't just a court date. It was the day we ended something. The day we chose not to carry it anymore. Tessa met me on the courthouse steps. She wore a navy dress and minimal makeup. Her hair was pulled back into a sleek ponytail. No jewelry, no ring, no trace of the woman who once planned an entire wedding on Pinterest to a man who saw her as an investment. She looked like power. Like truth. And me. I felt calm, not numb, just finished. We walked through the metal detectors, down the hallways we knew too well. The air inside was cool and humming with low voices and leather shoes. We took our seats behind the prosecution's table. And waited. Christian entered quietly. This time he wasn't flanked by lawyers, just one. The rest had pulled out weeks ago, citing irreconcilable strategy differences. Translation, they knew they couldn't win. He looked tired. Not broken, but diminished. For the first time, he looked like a man, not a symbol. And that terrified him more than anything. The judge entered. The courtroom rose. And then it began. The prosecution was surgical. They opened with evidence, not emotion, not drama. Just cold, undeniable facts. Emails. Spreadsheets. The ring receipt. The trust documents. The surveillance footage of Christian entering the jewelry store with a printout of my credit card authorization, forged with a copied signature. The jury flinched. Then came the statements. Former clients. Jody Rehan. Even an ex-associate who admitted on the stand that Christian spoke openly about using romantic partners to structure trusts creatively. By the time it was my turn, the tension was thick. I took the stand one final time. This time I didn't speak like a witness. I spoke like a woman who had rebuilt her life, one truth at a time. "I'm not here because I was victimized," I said. "I'm here because I survived someone who thought I wouldn't fight back." I paused, looked at the jury. My sister and I, we were treated like steps in a ladder, me for access, her for cover, but what he forgot is that we weren't just women, we were watching. Tessa's eyes welled behind her glasses. I nodded once, then turned to the judge. "I'm not asking for revenge, I'm asking for accountability, because without it, this doesn't end with us." When I stepped down, I passed Christian. He didn't look at me. But I saw his hand twitch slightly on the table. A tiny betrayal of control. That was enough. Tessa spoke next. Her voice didn't shake. "I wanted to marry a man who called me a future worth investing in. I didn't realize he meant it literally. I didn't realize I was part of a financial plan, not a love story." She looked straight at Christian. "And if you're listening now, I hope you remember this. You didn't just underestimate me. You misunderstood what love is. It's not power. It's not access. It's not debt disguised as devotion. It's showing up when the shine is gone and the balance is zero." She stepped down with her shoulders square. And just like that, the courtroom fell into silence. Closing arguments came quickly. The defense floundered. They tried to paint Christian as misunderstood, pressured, a man who got too creative. But the jury didn't buy it. We could feel it. When the judge dismissed them to deliberate, I took Tessa's hand. We waited. 1 hour. 2. 3. And then the bailiff appeared. "Verdict is in." We rose. The judge entered. And the jury foreperson stood. On the charge of financial fraud in the first degree, guilty. On the charge of identity theft, guilty. On the charge of coercive financial control, guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to falsify documents, guilty. 4 guilties. A breath I didn't know I'd been holding escaped my chest. Tessa gripped my hand so tight I felt her pulse in my palm. The judge sentenced Christian Vaughn to 12 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for the first 6. Fines, restitution, court-ordered public apologies to victims. He didn't speak. He was escorted out in cuffs. The courtroom emptied slowly. We didn't move. Not for a long time. We just sat there. Two women who had lost everything. And then one back more than we ever imagined. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. Reporters called out. Marley, do you have a statement? Tessa, are you satisfied with the outcome? Will you speak to other victims publicly now? I stepped forward, cleared my throat, and said, we didn't come here to be believed, we came here to tell the truth, and the truth, no matter how long it takes, will win. That was it. No more words. Just us. Walking away. Into sunlight. Into freedom. Into something that looked, for the first time in forever, like peace. Epilogue 6 months later. The book launched quietly. No big press tour. No giant release party. Just a signed copy mailed to every woman who had written us over the past year. Each one with a sticky note inside. This happened to us, it will not happen to you. Tessa now runs the Ledger Circle full-time. It's grown into a nationwide nonprofit. Workshops, legal aid, survivor grants. I sit on the board quietly, happily. And sometimes, on long drives or silent mornings, I remember who I was before the ring. Before the envelope. Before the fire. And I don't miss her. Because I know now. I wasn't made to stay quiet. I was made to see. To speak. To stand. And now,